Welcome to the Creative Mind podcast. My name is Maike Döling. I'm your host and I'm here to inspire you in unfolding your creativity and greatness. Today with my friend and breathwork facilitator Pia Gurgel about breathwork and remembering who we are. Take a breath and enjoy the conversation. I'm still very touched by my own breathwork experience I just had an hour ago. So I feel like I'm still a bit in that mood, but I'm very honored to have my dear friend Pia Gurgel today in the podcast. And yeah, we walked quite a path together since we both built our own business, and yeah, she also came from another background and walked her path until today. And I think we will listen to her story today, but also talk about breathwork and how she ended up to be a breathwork facilitator and an emotional release practitioner. I'm very glad and honored and grateful to have you in the podcast, Pia.
Thank you so much, Maike. It's such a pleasure and such an honor. And yeah, just really heartfelt thank you for having me here.
Also for the listeners, we are in Hamburg today. It's so nice to be here live with you. For me, it's always nice to also witness your path and the similarities we have with each other. So I think it's going to be a really interesting interview today.
Yeah, I'm so excited and so stoked. And yeah, I can definitely second what you said about the parallels and synchronicities that we just have or keep having in our lives. And yeah, just value the exchange we have every few weeks or so. Or I think we just check in and just see where we are. And it's a real big gift.
So let's start at the beginning. I just said a little bit about you, about the breathwork and emotional release, but you also came from another background. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about your story, about your background, how you ended up being a breathwork facilitator. Tell us something about your story.
Yes, sure. Yeah, I really do have a very different background. So for a long time, I was what I would probably call today walking someone else's path. And by that, I mean that, I pretty much followed what in Germany, I guess we would call like a very traditional path of like finishing high school and then studying, just kind of ending up working as a project manager eventually for pretty big e-commerce companies. I don't think I have to name them, but pretty big companies where the focus was not so much about the people, but it was just a lot about working hours and achievements and earning more money. I have to say at the same time, as a young person or as someone that just pretty recently graduated from university, I got big projects and many opportunities at a young age, which I'm really, really grateful for. But then at the same time, just after a year or two, I started having all these weird symptoms in my body and just felt, I guess in essence, I just felt not very seen as a person in these jobs, more like just working for. So someone that you could dump tasks on. And also, I guess as a project manager, you're always kind of in this role of trying to keep everyone happy and you're basically always every fault is your fault, kind of.
Yeah.
So what we used to say as project managers. So you kind of have to be quite tough and a little bit you have to have a little bit of a shell around you, I think, and just navigate all kinds of different situations. And so this was my background, and I actually believe that every step I took on my path was super important, and even that very first job that I had that was really, really demanding, because it eventually led me to saying, no, I need to go on a sabbatical. And because everything was so like stressful and demanding, and just for a while I couldn't really sleep well, and I had all these physical symptoms, back pain and whatever, and then I just woke up one morning, I was like, I think you need to take a break. And I was not burned out, but I think when I look back, I was really close to getting there. And I'm just glad that for some reason, even back then, I listened to this voice, and I just talked to my boss at that time, and she was surprisingly very supportive. And she's like, yeah, we can make it work. Like, you still have to, like, quote unquote, endure a few months, but like we can make it happen for you to go on a sabbatical in, I don't know, 6 months or so. I'm like, okay, cool. And I so made it through that time, most stressful and intense work period I've ever had. And then I went on that sabbatical, and I'm just bringing it up here because it changed everything for me, I think. Because I was pretty aware that at that point I was, like, work took up most of my daily life. So it also started to happen that, like, I lost a lot of my joy and passion about life. And like on the weekends, I basically went home and I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't even want to spend time with my boyfriend, really. I was happy when he was out of our apartment and just doing other things, because I just wanted quiet time and stillness. But then when I had that time, I couldn't relax, because what I now know is that my nervous system was super overstimulated, and I just couldn't find rest and relaxation, which we might pick up later on what that actually means. But so I ended up going on that sabbatical, and it literally took me 3.5 weeks or so until I was actually able to slow down. I went to Asia, so I think I was in Thailand first, and life was so much slower there, and I couldn't, like, my whole system didn't, like, understand it really. It was like I was quite impatient. I was like, why is everything taking so long? I was just annoyed a lot, and like, what? I'm not usually like that. Like, what is this telling me, kind of? And then eventually I noticed that it was just really, really hard for me to slow down and to like, I was in paradise, kind of, like I was on an island in Thailand somewhere, beautiful beaches and everything, but I couldn't really enjoy it because my mind and like something was so pushy or like so demanding of like you have to do like, I don't know, read a book that makes sense or like do something with this free time, and I couldn't. It was weird, and so I started noticing these things. But I think it almost took a month until I arrived in Bali, where I just really realized what was going on. And then a few days later I started my yoga teacher training, which I wanted to do for a while, and then all of a sudden like a lot of shifts just started to happen. And then on the second day of that training I just knew I had to quit my job, and I didn't know all the answers, but I knew that I just had to make really serious life changes if I wanted to be truly happy, and like, because I didn't want to live that life. I didn't want to feel pressured and stressed and unhappy and tired and all of these things all the time. I actually realized when I got to that training, I'm not like that, and also that like all the happiness and whatever that it is in me, but it's not coming through right now. And I needed to make changes, external changes, but also look internally to find out why my happiness was gone, basically, and my patience and my love for life and my excitement.
Oh, so interesting. There are already as well so many similarities. Like I had the same, I think I didn't have the same symptoms like you, but we talked about it a lot, like the overwhelmed nervous system and everything was too much. I also had this with my ex-boyfriend, that I liked it when he wasn't at home. And also when we went on vacation, sometimes he always complained that it took me so long to really calm down. A few days or sometimes longer, and at that time I just thought, well, that's how I am, but that's not true. There was just so much. I mean, now I'm living on Fuerteventura, and it took me more than 1 year to really, really slow down. So, but we will come back to that later. Okay, you quit your job. You were in Thailand, you said? And no, Bali?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened then?
So I quit that job I had at that time, and on that, I think, second day of my yoga training, and because I was also working in a different city in Germany at that time, and I had a long distance relationship with my boyfriend, and it was pretty clear that we just needed to make a change, like but also both of us, because we just didn't, we just wanted to be in the same city again. So I finished that training. I spent much more time in Bali than I first thought. Like I thought I would just go there for the training and then take the rest of my sabbatical time and just go to another country and, I don't know, explore. Never happened. Bali just, really, I don't even know. Like, I guess I fell in love with Bali and that time for the very first time, and I just felt so at home and so curious about this place or that island and the culture, and I just felt like, okay, I really, really don't want to go anywhere else. I just, there's something really here for me. And then I left about, I don't know, maybe 4 weeks later or so, and when I left, I knew I wasn't done. So it was a very strong feeling when I stepped onto the plane of like, okay, I need to leave now, but I'll come back because there's so much more for me to explore here, and I'm by far not done. Like, there's so much this island has to teach me about myself. I will come back, or I need to come back.
Yeah.
So I went back to Germany, and then I have to say it was a pretty rough landing. I guess I was also a bit in my like yoga bubble, and like my whole like I turned vegan at that time, and I don't know, like started to shift a lot of things quite rapidly, and my external environment, they were very confused because I mean, I left 3 months before that, and then I came back and like just started kind of turning my whole life upside down. And like looking back at it now, I fully understand that it was probably confronting or irritating or whatever, but it was not an easy landing for me to just be confronted with also and not to say that in like a judgmental way, but like the environment I had back then, also friends wise or connections, like people that were close to me, it was just such a different mindset to what I had just experienced in Bali, especially with the people from my yoga training, but also other people I just met, and they just, I guess, showed me or inspired me that there's so much more depth that is possible in connections, or so much, that there's just so much more possibility for depth and also expansion. And I feel like I kind of, got a glimpse into also more depth of my own soul. And once I had that, I couldn't, like, it almost felt like I can't live in my old life anymore. So it was, I knew I had to like continue with changing things and just kind of questioning everything, but it was also really hard because I literally had no one in my environment that I could talk to, or that I could even relate to my experience, or was even interested in hearing about my experience, except maybe my boyfriend and my sister or whatever. But even my friends were like, oh, okay, cool, so you went to yoga training, and it's again, not to judge that, it's just they were not so much interested in that world, and all of a sudden to me it meant everything, and yoga was my entry point. But like, at that time it felt like, okay, this is something like a hole that I'm just going into and I need to explore, kind of like Alice in Wonderland, like going into this hole, and there's probably so much more.
I like this picture.
So it was definitely not so easy, and I ended up working in another corporate job, or actually two, but it was really clear for me that I like these jobs I would make or like establish certain boundaries better than I did before.
Oh, okay. Can I ask, why did you go back to another job? What was that?
Good question. Well, I think when I first came back, I was really confident about, well, not really confident, but a little bit, like, at least I would trust myself, like, I can probably start teaching yoga now. And so I had my mind set to that, but then pretty much just a few weeks later, I was like, okay, but I actually also need to earn more money than I would make now just teaching yoga. So yeah, I think at that time when I look back, I just didn't feel secure enough to like, or also confident enough to really say, okay, I don't know, I'm just gonna go and lose all my financial stability. Yeah, so I think honestly, like it had to do a lot with financial stability. But I was much clearer with my boundaries. So like the first job I took was in some agency, and I just told them, I just want to work 4 days a week, and they were like fully supportive. So I just managed to get a bit more time for myself, and then actually I ended up switching jobs because I got another offer, whatever. But even at that company, I was also really clear about like, because I knew that job would be quite demanding again, but I was more clear around my boundaries, especially like time-wise, that I made it really clear from the beginning. I'm like, okay, if we have a project, or I have a project and it's due, and whatever I need to do or work a few extra hours, it's fine, but I'm not doing this every day, 4 weeks at a time. So I have to say, my team, or especially my boss, he was very supportive, and he was really respectful, and like even when he noticed that he had the feeling that I was working longer than I should or whatever, every now and then he's like, I think you should go home early tomorrow or whatever. So he really had an eye, and I really appreciated that about him. But it took a while to first of all, save up some money. But a year or two that I kept working in these jobs, and just to put a little bit something to the side, and to just kind of figure out also as well what I really wanted to do. Because I came back from that yoga training, and I knew I wanted to change things, but I also didn't know the direction or like exactly what I wanted to do. So still had to figure that out.
I know that you quit your job then at some point. So what happened, or what led you to quit your job?
I think, honestly, it's really different than the first time, or it was really different. But also, just when I look back at my path, it just makes a lot of sense, because eventually that financial security that I was talking about, it was still important in a way to me, but at the same time, that internal pain of going to a job that you don't like, and that you like, even if I had a great team, and even if I like the projects I was managing or working on, they weren't bad, or they weren't, generally the job was fine, I have to say, especially compared to the very first one I had. Like the conditions were much better, like everything was fine, but that internal pain of like, I really don't want to do this, and I kind of feel like I'm wasting my time here. I want to do something else, but then at the same time, another pain of like, I want to do something else, but I don't know exactly what it is, just grew immensely over time. And for a while, I think I kind of blocked myself, because there was like a belief, or I was convinced, I guess, that I needed to know what is next before I can actually go and quit my job. But then I came to a point where I was like, okay, but I'm still working too many hours. Like I'm not overworking, but still, like in the end of the day, I go home and I'm exhausted. So it's better than before, but it's still not ideal, because I'm exhausted, and then on the weekends I need time to recover or rest or whatever. So I just had that strong message come through, I guess, that I just need space in my life to figure out what it is that I want to do. So eventually I was like, I think I can't do this anymore. And I courageously took that decision to just tell my boss, okay, I have to go. Like I don't know what I'm gonna do next fully. I just knew, like, one thing I knew at that point was that I wanted to work with people, because it's something that I always liked in my in these jobs as a project manager. Was my task was to manage them, and like manage their capacities or whatever. But one thing that was always really important to me is like, how can they grow personally, and like how can I create space for them, even if I am just creating this certain little team inside of a bigger team for a while. But like, how can I help them grow, or how, like, what conditions can I provide them, or what space can I create for them so they can do their work but also grow in what they're doing and enjoy it and have fun and like just like what they're doing. So I've always known that I really like this aspect, but then in my corporate jobs, there was never really the room for really, working with them in a way that they could flourish and grow further than what I might have been able to give them a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess what that relates to is like this, and at the same time, because I've been in this like my personal development path was like started a little bit like a few years before going on that sabbatical. I think I just knew, okay, somehow in this area of like working with people, personal development, coaching, whatever, this is probably my path. But I was not very sure how that would look like.
I think this is so interesting because, I mean, I also went on my path of personal development before I quit my job. Of course, it started before, but then first other things happened. For example, I broke up with my boyfriend. It can't happen everything in one time. But once you felt or experienced this glimpse of whatever that is, your own path, and to follow your purpose or soul, or you will come to that point where you cannot live your own life anymore. And that, I think it was the both of us experienced it. I couldn't work in my company anymore then. I think sometimes we experience something like that, but then we have to go back to the old, because we cannot change immediately completely.
Yes,
so
definitely.
But the pain will be at some point so strong that we cannot, we have to leave.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And if I can add one thing, which to me, like if I look back at it now, it's so fascinating and it just all makes sense. But I think I also came to this point in a phase of my life or time of my life where astrologically, as you know, I also work with astrology quite a bit. We call it Saturn return. So it's a phase where just astrologically it's meant to shake up things in your life, kind of, but always with the intention to bring you into deeper alignment with your soul and with your path in this lifetime. And it just made a lot of sense, because while I was quitting my job at that time, I basically, and I'm not saying that everyone has to do it this way, but for me it was the right way, I turned around my whole life, because I also started questioning my relationship and my friendships, and like a lot of that wasn't easy. But I also knew that if I really wanted to find my own way in this life, if I wanted to find happiness, I guess, and contentment and more joy and excitement and passion about life and truth about myself and what my life is about, or what I'm here basically to do, I just needed to free myself from everything that would kind of hold me back, including jobs, including friendships, relationships, whatever, and kind of go into the unknown.
Okay, you jumped, you did that step. And when did you first discover breathwork, and what did it change for you?
Yes. I'm just going to add maybe a few more phrases how we continue from there, because I think it's going to lead up to breathwork very well. So once I had started to make these next changes, basically, because it was just a period of like one change after the other, and just flipping kind of every stone that was around me around, and like really checking out if I still wanted to have it in my backyard or not. So I guess I just started on this deep inner journey about myself, and like to just find out who I really am, because I've also in this whole period I had noticed that or realized over time that one question I had about myself was, who am I? And I think when I first started asking myself this question, I didn't have an answer. And I'm not saying that I have an answer today, but I pretty much feel like I have a good understanding of what my mind thinks I am. but also what I internally feel about my soul, my heart. So I know much more about myself. And at the same time, I'm way more relaxed about this question because I think it's a continuous exploration that I will keep having my entire life, probably. But at that point, it was super, super painful for me to realize I don't know who I am. And I don't know why I'm here in this lifetime. So I think that was almost like an additional fuel for this whole inner journey. And I just I just went through different modalities and worked with different people and just went on to explore different things, I guess. So all of these things made sense or come together, I guess, to what I do now, or merged into what I do now. So yes, as you mentioned, I work as a breathwork facilitator and an emotional release practitioner. And I also work as like a coach or a mentor for people that actually that are on this journey. Yeah. And when I explore these questions, like who am I really, beyond any conditioning, beyond any expectations that I might have taken on from others or from society, beyond any limiting beliefs I have about myself, and why am I here? So that's
I love these questions.
I think that's kind of the essence of my work, because that's what I'm trying to create with these spaces. Like I try to create spaces where people can explore these questions and reconnect to themselves and find their own truth and their own way, how they want to live life, how they want to be in the world, how they want to experience themselves and their relationships. And for me, breathwork has been one of the most powerful tools, emotional release, and also coaching or mentoring. So these things, I combine them because they've been the 3 tools that helped me the most. And to come back to your initial question about breathwork, I'm not trying to go very far out, but I want to bring in 2 little stories before my very first breathwork experience. So over that time after, or in that summer where I quit my job and my relationship, all of that, I was actually working with a coach which was so helpful to just have someone as support on my side. And she she's nowadays she's one of my closest friends, and I really love her dearly. But she's supported and opened me and opened my eyes in so many ways. And I had one experience with her where today I would probably say we went into very deep meditation, but like eventually I ended up connecting to my higher self, which I think I've never had that experience before. And I just saw a certain setup, whatever, like I just saw myself in a very interesting way. And on that day I went home and I just had this very strong impulse of like looking for another yoga teacher training, which I've been wanting to do for a while, whatever. I had decided on another one, but I just had this impulse of like, no, you need to research again. Because I knew later in that year I would go back to Bali and do a training there. So I did, and I ended up finding this teacher training, which interestingly combined yoga with breathwork and with astrology.
Oh my god!
And I just read through the page and I saw the teacher's pictures and just how he presented himself, I guess, and like just how he talked about these things, and I'm like, oh my god. Like, I need to be in this training. I don't know. It was just a very, very clear sign. And I think he was also, just showing me a lot of freedom, or something that I was desiring in that time of my life. And so I think there was also like some sort of connection between us, but then also content-wise. And at that time, I had never really heard about breathwork other than pranayama, let's say from yoga. So breathing techniques, but not breathwork. I was like, I don't even know what it is, but I feel super strongly called to just sign up. And then, I did. He agreed, whatever. And then a few weeks later, I had a dream where I was seeing myself again in this higher self version. And there was a big, big room, and I saw people in a certain setup, how they were like lying on the floor and they were doing breathwork. And like at that time I had never been in a breathwork session. I didn't know how they do it, like how rooms might be set up or anything. I just like, there were a lot of objects and they were like place in certain ways. And for some reason in this dream, I was leading a breathwork ceremony, and I had a team, and I just was guiding them around, and I was leading it and drumming and like doing all kinds of things. Anyway, so I woke up and I'm like, okay, this is really interesting. And I think at that time I wasn't even sure if I think I kind of knew it had to do with breathing, but still I didn't know what breathwork was. And then I went to Bali, and before that training started, I still hadn't done any breathwork. I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna learn. So, but a few days before, all of a sudden I was like, maybe I should do one session before to just kind of get a glimpse about what it is. So I went to a different teacher, a different style, whatever, and I had such a deep experience. And afterwards, I just knew why I was called to go in the right, or like why breathwork just attracted me so much. Because in that experience, even though it was a different style, it was a different facilitator, it doesn't matter, but I immediately like went back into like a birth related I don't think it was a trauma, but like a memory, and it just gave me an answer to a question that I had for a very long time, and it all of a sudden it made total sense. And then I just ended up starting that training. And to wrap up this story is that the very first day in this training that we did breathwork, it was like every 5 days or so, it was a breathwork day. So the very first time we did it, I walked into the room and I saw that the room was exactly set up like in my dream. And then I was just like, okay, something is going on here. I am a little bit scared what this experience is going to be like, but let's see. I am clearly meant to be here. And it was really, really powerful. And so that's kind of how I found breathwork, or breathwork maybe found me. I don't know. I guess you can say it both ways.
What did that change for you personally, breathwork?
It's interesting. Because I could answer it many ways, but I will start from that point or that time. I think breathwork really, really helped me to connect to my emotions, because a topic that I've certainly struggled for a long, long time with was I wasn't really able to feel certain emotions, especially sadness and grief, and also anger. Like they were really, really suppressed. And at that time, I also didn't know like what the reasons for that may have been, whatever. I mean, when you do this in a work, I think eventually you'll come to a point where you end up looking at your own emotions, or like where I think I reached a point where I was like, okay, I understand certain things with my mind, like mentally I understand that I probably have certain beliefs or stories I tell myself from childhood, and like I knew in a way why I adapted them maybe, but I couldn't really feel them. Like I couldn't really feel the pain or like sadness or whatever. Like and before I discovered breathwork, there was a very long time in my life where I couldn't cry. Like I could certainly never cry in front of people. But then even in front of my boyfriend, I would maybe cry once a year. And even if I was feeling some sadness about whatever situation, I could never really tap into it and let it come through or come out, because, which I understand today, is because I didn't feel safe in my own emotions. So that was, I think my breathwork journey has 2 chapters kind of, because the first chapter was pretty much about getting in touch with emotions at all. So that was like the first part that started in that training, whatever, which was followed though by a period of time where it was almost like a lid opened, and all of a sudden more emotions would come through, but they also felt very overwhelming to me, and I hadn't learned, or like in my nervous system I didn't know how to regulate myself if emotions were coming up that were so big, because I maybe hadn't felt them for a while or whatever, that I would, like, my nervous system would go into like a fear response. So I ended up having anxiety and panic attacks. So there was kind of from one chapter to the other, there was quite an uncomfortable time. And then the teacher training I did last year and finished last year with Breathwork Bali. I think that was like the second chapter, which was so important, because in this period I was only then, I think I was actually able to learn how to be with these emotions and not go into like a fear response or a numbing or a shutdown kind of. Yeah.
Okay, so you, after that first training, you decided to do another education, a breathwork education, or how is it called in Bali?
Yeah, so that yoga training was a combination with a breathwork training, and the breathwork part was basically a first half of a full training.
Okay.
So the idea was that you do one half, which was very centered around yourself and about like really embodying that technique and feeling it in your body and just going through your own process. And there was supposed to be a second half to that training where you just learn, facilitator skills, like what you actually need to know about when you want to hold space and guide someone through an experience. And I wanted to train with them or with that school, and I had signed up and everything, but I couldn't because of COVID.
I remember that time.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, when is it happening?
Yes. So I went back to Germany for a while. I just wanted to go back for a little while and take care of a few things, go back to Bali and finish that training, and then COVID hit and the borders closed and I just couldn't go back, and I was kind of stuck here in Germany, I guess. And it was definitely a really challenging time, because that vision of like wanting to work with people had become so much clearer, because I just deeply felt also through these visions and dreams I had before that I needed to work with breathwork. Like I needed to share breathwork in this world, or bring breathwork into this world. And when I wasn't able to do so to complete any training, because at that time also no in-person trainings really happened, and I was clear on I don't want to do it online. So I just kind of had to wait, and it was really, really challenging for me, to be honest, because it's almost like you see already like the horizon or like where you're going, and you just feel a very, very strong call, and you know it's your path, but you can't get there yet because there's circumstances that prevent you from going there.
So finally you did it. You finished your facilitator, I don't know, degree, certificate. So let's, maybe for the listeners, what is breathwork?
Yes. Yeah, I would love to give a little definition, because it's actually such a great question. I want to offer an explanation or a definition, let's say it that way, because it is true, like the world of breathwork is really broad. Like there's many different styles and many different schools, and also I ended up training with another school, which I'm super happy and grateful for. Yeah, so basically the world of breathwork, we can look at two different branches, kind of. So there's one branch that is really what I would call mind-based or mind-centered, and then there's another one which is more body-based or body-centered. So the first category, the mind-based techniques, they are really about controlling your breath with your mind. So what it means is you still use your active mind to control your breath. So examples would be yogic pranayama techniques. They usually work with counting your breath in a certain way, or holding it, or doing retentions, whatever. But also techniques like Wim Hof, which some listeners may know, where you also like breathe in a certain pattern, and you count, or you just follow a certain rhythm, but it really still involves the mind. Yeah. So you're not you are in your body because you're breathing the whole time and your breath is moving through the body, but it is every impulse about breathing or the rhythm of your breath is coming from your mind. So it's a controlled way of breathing. Yeah. And then there's another branch which pretty much shifts the focus much more to the body. So most of these techniques are called or are in some way conscious connected breathing techniques, which essentially means that you connect the breath. So while in the first branch we often have an inhale, a hold, and an exhale, maybe another hold, and they just vary in length or duration or whatever, or intensity. In these conscious connected breathing techniques, there a lot of times you take out any pauses and you connect the breath. So it means after every inhale you immediately exhale, and after every exhale you immediately inhale again, and you just create a loop of breathing basically. And these techniques, and there's a few different schools and ways of doing it, they usually vary in either nose breathing or mouth breathing, or if you breathe very rapidly and forcefully or more relaxed and gentle. But what they all have in common is that they usually over time bring you to a point where you move into a slightly altered state of mind or consciousness, and you also or it's very likely that you move out of your head and you just let your body take over. So that's why I would call it like body-based or body-centered approaches, because it's almost like giving your body permission to bring out any breathing pattern that it wants to bring up or to present, to show, and to move through these patterns.
Yeah, so many interesting things again. Okay, so the special thing about you're practicing, no, how do you say, practicing the body-based technique. Okay, you already said it, but what is the special thing about this technique? I think I can go one level or one layer deeper. So if we have the second category, and we call them body-based or all conscious connected breathing techniques. And as I said, there is different schools and different approaches to that. Like you can interpret it as like, okay, you only breathe through the mouth, what we do. But then there's another school, it's rebirthing, for example. It's another school or direction. They only breathe through the nose all the time. So there's still slight differences. And then the technique that my school uses, or we use at Breathwork Bali, it has a very interesting name. It's facilitated breath repatterning. It's a bit of a complicated name, but I think if I explain it, it makes a bit more sense. Because what we do is we take this technique, and then if the breather lays down in front of me, what I will do is, of course, I'll guide them to this connected breath, like you did a few hours ago. And you start breathing in this way. And then I am trained to assess how the breath moves through your body. So we combine, in this approach, breathing with body work and a few energy work techniques and like a few other things as well. So when I look at your breath, I will assess how it moves through, and then I use gentle touch or body work to see how it can move maybe more vividly or with more volume, or also where we maybe need to take out a little bit of breath to still keep you within your nervous system. And there is basically 3 zones that I will mostly look at, which we call diaphragms of breath. So that's an interesting one, because I'm pretty sure everyone knows we have a diaphragm like kind of below the rib cage. That's the one most people know. But actually we have more in the body. And 2 more that we look is, first of all, the pelvic floor. And then the second one is in the throat, like where the vocal cords are. So remember when in our session at one point I asked you to om with me. Yes. And that's a technique to clear this diaphragm. Because when we om, when we make a sound, we can clear any tension that's in the throat. That one will release this diaphragm here. And there's a lot of different facilitations I can use, but it's all like the intention is always to see how breath can move more easily or with more ease and flow through your body. And I will just kind of these 3 diaphragms are my main zones, let's say, to look at, but then from there I can just go into different areas of your body as well.
And the idea to close this and like come back to the name of like facilitated breath repatterning is so facilitated just means I am there and I'm facilitating, like I just explained, I'm assessing, and then I'm using touch work and body work to work on you and your breath. Breath, I don't have to explain, but then repatterning represents the idea that all of us, when we breathe, we can move in and out of different breath patterns. And maybe we can go into why breath patterns are created in a second.
Yes.
But the assumption is that the body stores all these different patterns we accumulate over time in our life, and it can access all of them. And sometimes there's patterns that are just not so supportive for us. And we can, again, talk about the reasons why they're there in a second. But the idea for this technique is when they come up, we can help, like I as a facilitator can help you kind of clear this pattern or change this pattern. So it's resolved from your nervous system and it doesn't show up again also in your life, because everything we are able to change or clear within breathwork, in a breathwork session, will automatically transfer to your daily life, essentially. So if we work with patterns that are dysfunctional or maladaptions that just are created within the system or the body over time, and we are able to change them to patterns that are more supportive for you, then you will feel this change in your life eventually.
Yeah. Okay, so... Well, as I said in the beginning, I had a really nice journey today as well, breathwork journey. And it was really beautiful and intense. And I said in the end to you, it felt a little bit like an ayahuasca ceremony.
Yes.
You know what surprised me was, okay, when I think of breathwork, for me it's okay. I want to breathe deeply and feel more connected to my breath. But also every time I do something like this, I mean, I don't do it so much, but I had one breathwork thing 1.5 years ago or something, and then now with you, and it always gets emotional. So that tells me that if I really breathe deeply and there's something in my body stuck, it will show up. So it's actually a really nice technique also to show the stuck emotions or tensions in the body as well, right? Or the topics in general who are there, hidden somewhere.
Yes, definitely. What I love about this approach is that it's so holistic. Because so what we always say is that topics or experiences, so breath patterns essentially, can kind of relate to 4 different areas, which we call the 4 directions.
Yes.
So these areas are like the physical body, the mind or the mental state, the emotional state, or just the heart, we could also call it, and then your spiritual self, or the spiritual side of things. So what is so fascinating to me is that you'll never really know what comes up in a session, like if one of these areas or all of them are touched, or if so it's really hard to predict before. Like it's also like, I mean, we can set intentions like we did earlier, and I don't know, maybe if I have an emotional topic that I'm working through in my life, it's likely that this topic shows up in a breathwork journey. But then at the same time, if there's something else that just wants to be seen, it will come up. So my deep belief is that the body and its wisdom will always bring up the breathing patterns that are ready to be resolved or to be looked at, and the body wants to kind of move through. So there's an infinite wisdom in the body and also in your breath.
Okay, so I think now we come to that point what you also mentioned already. I mean, obviously we are born and breathe normally, right?
Yes.
So what happens during our life that we stop breathing naturally, I would call it?
Yes. If you imagine a baby, I don't know if you've ever seen a baby breathe.
Maybe not
Yeah, probably not consciously.
Yeah.
And it's fine. But like in generally we can see or say that they breathe quite steady. Like they often breathe a bit faster than we breathe, but they have a very flowy rhythm. They just breathe very steady and like in a certain pace, and then if they sleep maybe a bit slower, but like still it's very consistent, and it's very nice to watch and to observe. So if anyone ever has the chance to look at the baby breathing, it's calming also. Yeah. Anyways, so what happens is that we grow up and we walk through life and we have experiences, or we start having experiences with ourselves, but also with parents, with teachers, with whoever, with friends. And there's a few things happening in parallel. First of all, we might have experiences that are not so nice, that are painful, and they will have an imprint or leave an imprint in our system. Then we might be challenged or faced with certain conditioning or with expectations that other people, our parents or whoever else, place upon us, or with expectations, and all of these things are unconsciously stored in our cells, like physical cells, and also in the unconscious part of our psyche. And then all of these things, but especially let's say experiences, something we experience may be a heartbreak or maybe an accident or physical pain, or all of it will, as I said, leave an imprint, and these imprints always relate to a certain breathing pattern that is then stored within our system as well. And our things that are uncomfortable for us, let's say I just had a very, very big fight with someone, or my boyfriend left me or whatever, and I'm heartbroken, then I probably don't want to breathe into my heart for a while, because maybe that pain is too overwhelming, or I can't really cope with life if I feel this pain all the time, so I might stop breathing into my heart for a while. And that is pretty smart. Like our bodies are super, super smart. Also, I can give another example in a second, which makes it even more transparent, but like let's stick with the heart example for a moment. So if I don't breathe there for a while, it might actually help me heal and get over that breakup. But if I never breathe into my heart again, I'll probably walk through life with a very closed heart, which might mean that my relationships, like my other relationships, are affected. Maybe I can't let people in. Maybe I can't let them come close to me because I'm afraid of getting hurt again. Or maybe I'm just walking through the world and I don't really want to relate or like let someone else or new love into my life because it might hurt me again. Or another example to just show the variety of things, like how breathing patterns are created, is let's say you walk across the street and then a bicycle just passes you and you fall. So first of all, the first breathing pattern that might be created is like a moment of shock, because you're not expecting that. Like you're just walking down the street, all of a sudden someone's cutting you off and like you fall, and just the whole incident by itself might already create a breathing pattern, which could get stuck unless it's cleared after, like right after. What that could look like is like you actually get up and you take a deep breath, for example, or you have a friend that saw you and she just comes by and gives you a hug and you are actually receiving some correlation, and then you can close it. It's almost like a trauma cycle which can be completed. In that case, that breathing pattern would not be so likely to get stuck because in a way it's completed. But if it isn't, or if you had that accident and you fell and then you realize, okay, this was really shocking, but now I also have this physical pain on, let's say, my right hip, and it's a big bruise and it really hurts, there might be another breathing pattern that is created around this pain in the hip, meaning because you don't want to breathe there. Like again, our body is really smart. So if we have physical pain, it also doesn't want you to breathe there so much because, or if you have an appendix surgery, let's say. Yeah. So until this is healed, there's a high chance that you'll breathe a little bit differently, even if you don't know. A lot of these things happen unconsciously, and it's fine. But if this gets stuck, again, this breathing pattern, let's say you don't breathe into your right hip anymore or into the area of the appendix because it was very painful for a while when it healed, that might cause actually physical problems in your digestive system, let's say, or in your right hip, because all of a sudden there's not so much energy flow moving through it. And yeah, it just might lead to a whole bunch of consequences also on a physical level if we don't bring breath to certain areas of our body.
How do we realize if we have breathing patterns that are not normal?
Well, I wouldn't say they are not normal, because I also think that every breath pattern has probably a protective layer to it. Yeah. So I think just as we maybe in inner child work or parts work or whatever, there's a concept of like parts that want to protect us. Yeah. And they sometimes come in when you're working on a certain topic or whatever. I would even say you can relate it to a breath pattern in a certain way, because again, it's, if we come back to the wisdom of the body and of the breath, I think we should just keep that in mind. Like, there's not normal things, it's just what the reaction was to protect you in that moment, or to heal, or to be able to process something that was actually too overwhelming or too big. So just to add that about the normal part. But to your question, well, first of all of us have breathing patterns that are probably not so supportive, that are slightly dysfunctional, just because we go through life, and like even myself or other people that are on the breath, like that just do breath work quite often, most of us find that even if we breathe over months, years, whatever, like regularly, every now and then something still shows up. And it might be eventually, maybe it's more recent experiences, let's say the fight you had last week with your brother or whatever. But even now and then, like, things just emerge from deeper layers of consciousness that were not ready to come up before. So I don't want to say it's 100% sure that everyone has it, but I would say most humans have some dysfunctional breathing patterns just from walking through life and living life every day in the way they do. However, what people, also listeners maybe at home, can assess just for themselves is to start observing your breath in certain situations. And it doesn't have to be like a judgmental thing or like an observation about, is this right or wrong? It's more like just noticing or witnessing your own breath in certain moments. Like, do you hold it when you're stressed? Do you maybe start breathing into your belly in certain situations? Or do you start clenching your jaw and maybe holding air like somewhere really stuck in your throat if you are angry but you can't express it or whatever? And just these might already be like little cues that there's probably an underlying breathing patterns that relates to an experience or an emotion that wasn't able to be completed or couldn't come out before.
Okay, would you also say that, for example, if somebody does, let's say, inner child work or something, and there is a topic coming up and is healed, that the breath also changes because of that?
It could be. Could be. Just trying to maybe find an example of myself. But I think there's maybe one condition to it. So what we do in this technique is also really work strongly with the nervous system. So I think the chance that if we work through something on a mental level with inner child work, and then maybe also work on it with on an emotional level, might be pretty high, but it could still be in your nervous system. Like this imprint or this memory, whatever, it could be cleared on these levels. However, there might still be one breathing pattern which would show that it's still in your nervous system. So it's an interesting question.
Yeah, this is now a very interesting topic, because I mean, I don't work with breath work, but I do the like for example, the energetic healing, and it's the same. You need you can do the work on a mental level, but you sometimes really need to do the energetical release just because it's still in your system, and it doesn't. I think you have to combine the body or energetic work with the mental work.
Yes,
that's what I think.
Yeah, I personally agree. I have a few. I know a few people would see in the breathwork work would see it differently, and they would kind of see breathwork as the ultimate way to kind of clear things.
Yeah,
which I personally kind of agree to, but also with my own background and how I just have been walking my own path, and just according to my own experiences, and also how I work. To me, it still makes sense to bring in the mental level and the mind to a certain degree. I'm just really mindful also with clients to not over-rationalize things or to over-intellectualize things. Yeah. Because our mind can also create a story and make a thing much bigger than it is. And then on nervous system level, it's actually not that big. It's not. Yes. It's already cleared.
Yes.
So
I agree to that, and also that's why I also like these like the energetic world, or I also work with energetic psychology, and that's also like you don't have to say the topic before, but your body will show you the topic, and that's what I also experienced now in the breath work, because I set an intention, but I didn't tell you exactly what I want to find out with this session.
Yes.
It just, my body showed, or whatever it was, it showed up. And that is, for me, the magic of techniques like this.
Yes. Yes, because it allows the full expression of the body.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned it before, to me it's like the ultimate wisdom or infinite wisdom of the body and what it's... Because in the end, like, our body has its own story.
Yeah.
And yes, with our mind, we might tell or think we know this story or know a certain story, but our body will tell you often a very different thing.
I think that's maybe also because it's sometimes a little bit scary. I also told you before that I all of a sudden felt this strange fear, which I didn't know where that came from. But I think sometimes it is scary because we all want to have some kind of control, and if we don't know what happens, that can sometimes be scary. Yes,
certainly. And so the technique I work with, again, this like facilitated breath repatterning, or we call it FBR, is as far as I know, it's one of the safest breathwork techniques that are out there. Because it's so closely tied to the nervous system. And also in my own healing journey, and over the years I've explored with many, many different breathing techniques or breathwork styles, but only this one has really helped me create lasting change. Yeah. Like, there are other techniques that I work with, and they help me to go or express emotions, but then like in maybe a very cathartic way, like really loud or expressive, whatever. But I felt better for a little bit, but they didn't create the shifts that I've experienced now with this technique. And nervous systems, they just need time. Like, a lot of times shifts and changes need time. So one thing that I'm really mindful is that I'm not pushing someone out of their own, what we call window of tolerance. So like, each person has a certain capacity for experiences, and it doesn't mean that you are always in this certain window. Like, you can expand this capacity over time. But to me, it just makes so much sense to do it slowly and to like tap into experience and then move out again and then go in again and always come back to safety and your own center, and then go a bit further and then you come back again. And it's a concept also called titration sometimes. So we go in a little bit, go out, and this for me creates so much more room for lasting and sustainable change.
Yeah, I think we also had this topic a little bit in the other episode with Anna about the trauma awareness and embodiment. Yes. That I also think, and she said that I think as well, that only the topics will show up you are able to hold or deal with.
Yes.
And that's, I guess, I would say that's the same with breathwork. I mean, I don't know. You have the experience, but
totally. Yeah. Should I, like, if you want, I can give a personal example, because you also, I think it's maybe also a good explanation about the like mind and body connection. So I think in the first month of my breathwork training, and I've mentioned this to you before, I over time realized that I have a hold in my stomach when I exhale. And it was completely unconscious, but once we discovered it in breathwork, or I discovered it, I actually also noticed that I was doing that in daily life, but I just wasn't aware. So it was just happening all the time until we kind of brought light on it. And then it was so much more obvious that I could just feel it when I was walking through the streets or like in a cafe or whatever. I'm like, oh, this is actually weird. Why am I doing this? Anyways, so why I'm bringing up this example though is that, first of all, it related to a topic that I thought I had cleared. So my mind was already ahead and was like, no, I've worked through this topic and it's clear. And I'll tell in a second what the topic was. And then the second one, or the second thing I wanted to bring into this example is that idea of titration, or the window of tolerance. Because in my breathwork training, like my teacher, or the teacher team, they worked with me on this pattern for a period of like 3 or 4 weeks until it kind of cleared, which was brilliant, because week by week I was kind of moving a bit deeper into it, and then eventually in one session it just kind of wasn't there anymore. So it was kind of a longer process, but it ended up resolving completely. Like now I don't have that pattern anymore, it's not showing up. And then the interesting thing is how this pattern and the topic that related to it also cleared from my daily life. Because there is, again, as I said, a connection between the breathing patterns and how our nervous system is set up, or what we can see in the nervous system in breathwork, and how that person actually lives their life and how they navigate life and experience life. Oh,
it's a beautiful example.
Yeah. Should I make it a bit more transparent, like what it meant for me? Yeah, so the topic that was behind this was actually, it had to do with like feeling safe in my own body and feeling safe in the world. And you know a bit more of my story, you know it a bit deeper, but like at this point, what I can share, I think on a mental level, I felt like, I'm actually so much more grounded. I feel fine in this world. I am in my body, all of that. Like that's what I was believing. But my body was still telling a different story, and I still had this breathing pattern. We say if there's a hold in the exhale, it can have different reasons. But for me, and I think I've also talked about it with my teacher for a bit, like this hold in the end, it represented a fear of losing control, or not being able to fully let go. And I can, when I look back, I can say that there was still a part of me that was quite fearful of life, or much more of a life on Earth. There was a part of me that didn't feel very safe here on Earth, and that also maybe didn't want to be here fully, or wasn't sure if I can trust this human experience, basically. So we started working on this pattern, and eventually, I felt really in my body. I think before I thought I was in my body, but I wasn't. And then breathwork to me also means, or is like a very embodied technique, because you are breathing, and you can also have spiritual experiences, whatever, but you are while you're breathing, you're still in your body. So it is very embodied, and I think it helped me so much more to actually understand. Mentally, I thought I was in my body, but you can still not be in your body even if you think you are. So I think a big part of my process in that training at that time was about learning to feel safe in my body, and then being there and actually knowing, it's okay to be here, and not just think but feel embodied.
It's okay. Now it gets a little bit philosophical, but I really like that example, because this thing of letting go of control, I think we all have that in a way.
Yes.
I mean, I also had that strongly. But I would also say that with now we already talked a bit about psychedelics, and we also did privately, since the listeners know I did my ayahuasca thing, but that was actually the biggest thing of letting go of control this year I did. And so also afterwards, I think that supported me in also letting go of many other things afterwards in my life, and really commit to what is just there and to being. And it's so interesting that we want to control things, but in the end we have to let go of control to really be in life.
Yes.
It's a funny thing. Okay. Or do you want to add something?
No, go ahead.
What is consciousness work for you? Because I feel like it's also connected to breath work, to the whole coaching thing we do.
Yes. Yeah, I love this question. Yes, where to start? It's such an interesting question because to me, consciousness is limitless and incredibly expansive. So what I perceive as my consciousness today will probably or hopefully be very different tomorrow or in a year, because I believe that consciousness, and it's maybe also a concept from Tantra, where they say, okay, there's Shiva and Shakti, and Shiva is pure consciousness, but then Shakti is life, and it wants to be wild, and it wants to expand and like live life or experience life in all the beautiful ways. And I'm sure there's other people that could, I'm not very super deep into tantric philosophy, but it's something when I think of consciousness, it's, for me it's both, like it's this this pure consciousness that we probably also got to experience, both of us, in some psychedelic journeys. But then it's also this like being in life and bringing it together. So consciousness work for me is, I think, partly the question, how can this divine consciousness express itself through me? Like how can I kind of move out of the way and be, well, maybe not a vessel, because I don't want to be that vessel all the time, because I also think there's a reason why I have a human form. So by vessel I mean like a channel for that divine energy or consciousness quality, but I still have my body and a human form, and that I believe it has a reason. So first of all, how can I open to that source or to that consciousness to be express itself through me? But then there's another layer to it for me, which is more like my own consciousness and how I see the world, or what I perceive to be the world. And playing with that capacity. Because if let's say I look back at myself 4 years ago, when I came out of that, or 4.5 years ago, out of that first training, my consciousness had, what I thought at that time, massively expanded, which I think was true in a way, because just through different teachings or whatever, and transmissions I received, all of a sudden I just saw the world in a different way, or I started seeing it in a different way. But then if I look back at this version of myself, or what I thought at that moment was like an evolution of consciousness, yes it was, but it wasn't that expensive compared to where I'm now, in a way. Because since that I don't know, had many other experiences or whatever. So what consciousness work for me is also like the continuous inner journey, I guess, and the willingness to over and over again face the fact that I still don't know. I still don't know the answer to who am I, why am I here, but the continuous willingness to keep asking these questions and to keep exploring, and at the same time the humility to say I don't know, maybe I will never know. So that's also consciousness for me, like the thriving for expansion while staying grounded. And also realizing that every time I think I know, I probably don't know.
I love that. First, what I found really important, what you said, is that if we do all that spiritual work and being connected to a higher self or whatever it is, there are many things you can be connected to, but also connect this to the human life and to our human body and not be just in this spiritual world, because I think that's not what it's all about. And I really think that we have to bring these two together and step into life and live life with that and use it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say I fully agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And the second thing is also, I also think that we have our own journey of expanding our consciousness. I mean, when I look back 10 years ago or whatever, I really thought I know who I am. But that was also strongly connected to my country, my parents, my story, my culture and everything. And that's actually not who we are. And for me, that's also consciousness work, to let go of that identity, what we think we are.
Oh, yes.
And expand into something which we don't know what it is, but what is kind of our essence. Yes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Like, I would agree, because I do believe that. So while we are all of us are this divine consciousness, or like the pure consciousness, Shiva, I also believe we all have a human body for a reason, as I said before, but I also think there's another part which is our essence, nature, or our soul, that also comes into play. Yeah. And essentially it's super nice that you bring it up, because conscious work to me also means not just answering these questions like who am I, why I'm here, on like a let's say more ego level, or like because there's in each one of us there's this inner part, this inner connection, this true nature that will never change, not in this lifetime, and probably also not in the ones after or before. And so the question from like the who am I is not my name, it's not my profession, it's not my whatever, my relationship status, or I don't know what, but it's more this essence, nature. I guess that's how I would call it, or soul.
Yeah. And I also agree to what you said. The more, and that's what I also experienced, the more we expand our consciousness, the less we know.
Yes.
And it's sometimes I really feel like, okay, I'm flying in a whole universe of so many things. Like, I really can't explain how big that universe is and how small I am in that universe. But no, as I said, the more I expand, or I think I understand what this is all about, the less I know. Yeah. But in the same way, I feel like I'm getting closer to who I really am.
I would fully agree. And to quickly elaborate on that, so the question of who am I think when I was feeling this strong inner pain of not knowing who I am, at that time it was very, very painful, and I was ashamed and judged myself for it and all of this. But I think it was so painful because it was an ego attachment to knowing an answer, to wanting to know that answer, so I could tell that answer to others, maybe, or just to myself or whatever. But it was really an ego part. So I think what you say, and also what I personally as well experienced, this like expansion of self, and even if I like being okay with not knowing the answer, but at the same time feeling really like I know myself. To me, it just, I would maybe describe it as like this inner connection is so much stronger than it used to be, that even if I don't know the words or who, like, to describe what I am or who I am, or even if I don't know, that inner connection is there. Like it's an inner feeling of I can't say who I am, or I don't know, but I feel that I know in a way.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that, because that's now we come back to the feeling inside and not to our mind, because that's the feeling we have to follow. And that's also when we really trust ourselves and follow that intuition or our feelings. And that's also why it's so important to connect to our emotions and stuff like that. I think if we really follow our feelings and our intuition and our heart, and there's so much to follow, life will show us the way, and we don't need this outer safety. And I think that's where the magic happens, because I think we all know kind of what we are looking for in life. Like maybe some have visions, some have dreams they want since they are a child, some have this feeling they want to live. Like we all have something where we are heading to,
like a longing or a journey.
Yes. And I think if we follow our inner whatever leads us, life will show us the way. And that's also a big thing of letting go of control, because we can't say, okay, it has to work like this. Life can show us so many more beautiful ways.
I fully agree. And I think one thing that actually what I feel plays a big role in this is also what you kind of touched into before about like being embodied and connected. Because it is true, and I've also been there, I think, on my own journey, that there are many people out there that are very spiritually connected, and not to say that that is wrong, but if you're not also here on earth, if you're not also grounded, then it's really hard to actually make a change in the world. If you like have certain things you want to accomplish or reach or go for, and I think it's also actually really hard to hear that clear calling or voice, because it's so easy to get up in spiritual messages or like something higher that is always telling you something, and not to say that that is not possible or that it's not true. I also have these moments where I just feel like, okay, I'm just getting like divine guidance right now. But at the same time, I also hear my own inner voice or that guidance internally, or my intuition telling me certain things. And so, but in order to hear that voice, that inner voice, I think it's super important to be also embodied. So for me, it's about both. And I would, one description for it or a name for it, what I really like is grounded spirituality. Or embodied spirituality, because like as I said a few times by now, I really strongly believe there's a reason why we are all in this human body and form, and whatever your mission is, or your path, or your calling, or yearning, whatever in this lifetime, you can not just do it if you're meditating all day, and like maybe a few beings that have incarnated as a certain, like in a certain way, whatever, but the majority of people that are here, the souls that are here on earth now, are here to experience things in a human body. And that's at least my perspective on it. So it's brilliant and wonderful to be in all these spiritual worlds, but what does it mean in the end?
Yes, you know, I always see your tattoo on your arm. Remember who you are. So that I told you that has always been my motto for a long time, or my password in many platforms.
Better change it now.
So I think to remember who we are, or who we are, we can ask the spiritual world, but we have to walk our path on earth also to find out who we are.
May I add one thing to this?
Yes, please.
Yeah, because so two things. I think just to underline the importance is, yes, we have to walk this life on earth, because here is where we make experiences. Yes, we can have spiritual experiences, but they are they just happen in a different frequency and dimension and whatever. And it's beautiful to witness them and to keep them or to have them in your heart, your consciousness, wherever. But being in this life means also being confronted with other people.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to have these relationships because we are just mirrors for each other all the time, right? So I remember myself when I see you, and you see yourself when or you remember yourself or a part in yourself when you see me.
Yeah.
And that's so important. And I honestly believe, like, as much as I love spirituality and meditation, having amazing experiences around spirituality, that this part is not possible in the same way if we like the relating and the mirroring and really growing and like bringing whatever we have realized internally into this world, if we don't connect with others and if we don't relate and just experience how whatever we have on our side is reacting to another person.
Yeah, and I also think like the spiritual connection can help us. It can tell us a lot, but it helps us actually to live the life on earth.
Yes.
So
totally.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
So beautiful. Okay, one more question. Back to the breath.
Yes.
I already told you before our conversation that I had a conversation with somebody talking about free diving. Oh no, I watched a documentary as well where a woman, a free diver, she was talking about that in the water, when she doesn't breathe, she has the experience of just being. And I could totally feel what she said, and in the same time I was like starting to think, because I knew, okay, we're going to do a breathwork session, and we also discussed like the breath is, or you say breath is life, what I agree as well. And I was thinking about this, okay, we need to breathe to live, but do we need to breathe to be? Or what is between the two breaths, you know? So do you want to add something to this thought? Do we need to breathe?
Yeah, so in general I would say yes.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, not just to survive, because it is true, like just on that layer, it is true that, I mean, humans can survive without water for a certain time, without food, even without physical touch or care by others. So like some of the other basic needs, we can still survive. But you can only survive for a very limited amount of time if you don't breathe. So just on a physical level, yes, you must need to breathe.
Of course, yes.
But I know you want to go to another layer, and I still would say yes, we need to breathe, because for me, breath is our life force and our energy. And of course, we can experiment with not breathing for a while, and I can say a few sentences about that in a moment. But if to me, it's like if energy is not moving, or if breath is not moving through your body, energy is not moving, your life force, your power is not moving. Like your system is not in movement. It's kind of, I don't want to say stuck because it sounds really negative, but there's no progression. And not to say that we have to breathe to reach a goal or to progress or whatever, but it's just no breath also means no movement, at least to me.
It's funny, when I had this experience today, for a minute or so, I think I thought about this question before. And I can totally understand, because I don't know who said that. I was listening to an interview, and the guy said, between two breaths, there's a break, and this is God.
Yes.
And I can feel that too, because there's such a silence, and it's like a stand still stand.
Yes.
So I think that's the feeling the divers have underwater. I can't tell because I'm not diving, but that's maybe the feeling. But today in this experience, I have to admit that I was breathing. No, I felt like my body was breathing in the end. It was not me anymore. It was just life. And I think that's maybe the same state of like if you don't breathe underwater maybe and experience this state of being.
Yes. I have to say I'm also not a free diver or a diver at all. But I've heard a few of my colleagues' stories around diving, and they've described it in a pretty similar way.
Yeah.
And for me to answer or to just give another perspective maybe is what I love is the understanding of it can be both. Like both can be true simultaneously or at the same time. So yes, I would say that to me breath is life.
Yes.
And what you experience today is a beautiful example of your body or essentially life taking over and like expanding and breathing through you. What a beautiful experience.
Yes.
And then on the other hand, and I've also had breathwork journeys or also other experiences where I would 100% agree to that phrase of like the pause in between the in and exhale or the exhale and inhale is divine, is God, is consciousness, it's pure bliss. Because I've had these experiences as well. And interestingly, as you experienced today, like we go in a breathwork journey, it is a journey, so we go through different phases and there's a relaxation time. And what happens quite often is that people in this time just stop breathing for a while. But it's not something that is consciously controlled. It's just because it's coming out of their body or their nervous system to not breathe for a while. And that's a lot of times this is when people have very spiritual experiences or this feeling of union with everything or union with consciousness or just feel a lot of energy in life moving through them. Yeah, and there's a few other ways how we could actually navigate some or like try to kind of guide someone into an experience like that.
Yeah.
Where we would work with like a breath retention, where you hold the breath for a while in whatever way. So for me, I think actually both can be true, or is probably true.
Yeah.
Like yes, breath is life to me, and at the same time, we can also find God and spirit and divinity, whatever, in this in between.
I want to ask you one last question.
Yes.
First, is there anything else we didn't talk about today which is maybe important for you to still add to this conversation?
Yes, I think I have one topic or one idea that I would like to bring into this conversation. Just because it's been something I had to learn personally on my path, and I also, working with my clients, see again and again how important this idea is, or like this thing. And it's the idea of integration and rest.
Oh yeah.
And especially I think in the spiritual world, but also in life in general, it's just easy to either forget to take rest in general, or time for integration after certain experiences, or to always go towards the next thing and never really stop.
Yeah.
And I'm just bringing this up because on my personal journey I've been really, it's something I've really needed to grow into and like really learn to appreciate and understand that like true growth and goal, like the true gold and actual growth mostly happens in times where we take a break, where we stop, where we take a breath, let's say, and stop and just maybe also take a bit of time to reflect, but it doesn't even have to involve mental capacity, just to generally just don't always immediately go to the next experience or plan ahead what is next, or like basically the image I like is if you're standing on a mountain which you just climb, can you enjoy that moment? Can you really celebrate that moment and look at the vast beauty of life or all the other mountains around you, or are you already looking at the next peak to climb? So
thank you for saying this. This is so important, and I liked it that you just said take a breath, because for me this integration, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, and sometimes it depends on what you did.
Totally, yeah. And
sometimes you need a day, sometimes you need weeks for whatever it is.
Yeah, totally. And I'm also, I mean, it's super personal or individual, like, and yeah, I totally agree what you say. And also, I think your capacity to integrate certain experiences increases over time. So while maybe 2 years ago, if I don't know, went somewhere and had like a breathwork journey that was quite intense, sometimes I probably needed a few days, a week, maybe even 2 weeks to digest it and like really work through whatever else maybe came up after. And now, I mean, I never really know what happens, but I know my capacity to bring me back into a, let's say, more regulated, or what I kind of would maybe not say normal, but like a baseline state is much bigger. And I think we can all grow this capacity, and just by knowing yourself well, and maybe also kind of just planning a little bit, like if you know you have an experience that might leave you a bit open or raw or vulnerable, or might just bring up something, can also be, by the way, something super beautiful. Like, yeah, of course you can have super like experiences that charge you up and you're like in pure bliss and love. Still, like, give yourself time to integrate these experiences as well afterwards, because life will come back to you and bring you down to like another state, because everything like just is very fluid and flowy and changes all the time, like your mental, emotional states. So yeah, I think that's just something I want to really share.
Yeah, I just like the picture of the, okay, we do something, we breathe, and then we rest in this. It's like a rest in whatever we experienced, because sometimes, and I also know that from some clients, and I know it from myself as well, impatience. Yeah. And think they did something and then they think, oh, nothing changed, but they haven't even integrated it or rested in it, and so it's sometimes half a year later if it changed something. Totally.
Like some things take time.
Yes.
Give yourself that gift of being present with what is.
Yeah.
And just acknowledge how big that was, what you just did. Even if it's the smallest, tiniest thing. I don't know, maybe it's not that small. Maybe it actually has more impact than you think right now. And in 6 months of time ahead, you actually notice that this one apparently tiny thing changed quite a big thing in your life.
I completely agree. I won't bring the examples now, but I had, while you were speaking, 3 things in my mind which happened this year, where I now can see what really changed after weeks, and I still think that I don't know the outcome completely.
Yes.
So yeah, we are allowed to trust the process.
Yeah, fully. And to me that's where the gold is, the true growth.
Yeah, and there we come back to being and not always running after something.
Totally. And it's something as well that we practice in breathwork.
Yeah.
Like in many different ways, and I don't want to open more topics now, but like just as you maybe have noticed today, like, yes, there were certain experiences or emotions or whatever for you, but then I think there were also moments where you were able to just be with them.
Yes.
So it's like, it's presence, it's witnessing, and it's not being somewhere else in the future or the past. It's like right here, right in this moment.
Yeah, that was the most beautiful thing about the whole. Yes. So, what are 3 wisdoms you want to give to our listeners today?
Love that. Yeah, so the first one, it's interesting because we kind of touched into it now, but like I would say really trust your path. Like really trust whatever impulses you're getting from inside. It doesn't matter if it's a voice or a gut feeling or your intuition, whatever. Just trust that you're meant to walk a certain path, and I don't believe so much that there's just one path that you are meant to walk. I still believe that there's like some twists and turns you can take, but in general I would say trust your path and trust that guidance. Yeah. And also that you will be guided. if you listen.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And that's probably the second one. Make time to listen.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And by that I mean, and it can be very individual again, like for some people meditation really works, for others it doesn't. Like for myself, I know if I don't make time in my day to meditate, I just have a really different experience in my day. So I know it's a practice I rarely skip, but it doesn't have to be the same for you. But it just, what I mean with like make space to listen is, just make time for yourself where you are either just with yourself in a space or in nature, or you practice a certain hobby or where you can be creative, whatever, but just allow space to listen.
I love that.
Yes. And the third one, I don't know why, but it's coming right through right now in this moment, is learn to receive.
Oh, yes.
Learn to receive, which does also relate, of course, to my own path and my own journey. But what I mean with that is, I feel like we are in a world that's very masculine and very actional, and it all has its place. And we need this energy also in us. But if it takes over, there can be a quality where, you just really, when we touched into it, like where you're impatient, where you just want things to go in a certain way, and you're always like trying to control things, essentially, I guess, or like you're trying to move forward in a certain way. And it can be beneficial to be in these qualities and like to have them on your side. But then if you don't have a counterpart that balances it out, like ties into the first two, trusting and like allowing space, also quite feminine, but also where you bring in a quality of allowing others to take care for you, let's say, or whatever way you're actually receiving, like you're not so much doing and giving and making things happen all the time, but you're receiving. That's where you're actually bringing in both sides, the masculine and the feminine. When to me it also means like to actually start living more balance in my life. And whatever that quality of receiving is, it can show up and manifest in so many ways. It doesn't necessarily mean someone has to give something to you, receive a gift. Another whole conversation, but like learn to receive and maybe find out what receiving means to you.
Yes.
That's something I would really love to give as an impulse to reflect on.
I like that question, just to give it to the listeners.
Yes.
To the end of this beautiful conversation. How can people work with you, and where can people find you?
Yes. As we mentioned in the very beginning, I work as a breathwork facilitator, emotional release practitioner, and a mentor, guide, or coach mentor. So breathwork sessions, I only do them in person. So I've been in Germany for a few months now. I'm heading back to Bali, so for the next few months they will only be possible in Bali. And it's just because it involves so much body work, and I really don't believe in online breathwork. It's my personal feeling that it's not meant to be shared, at least the way how we practice it, working with the nervous system on such a gradual level, that it's not meant to be shared online. But I do offer online sessions for mentoring and neo-emotional release or emotional release. If people want to connect and find out more how that looks and how any offerings around that or programs could they can just find me on Instagram, best way, I would say. And I offer different options for like 4, 6, 8 week programs most of the time, because I really believe in that change takes time. So I mostly work within these containers that are a little bit longer rather than like single sessions here and there. And personally I just also love to go deep, and I love depth. So
Okay, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for all the work you do. I just experienced it today in such a beautiful way. Thank you for being and for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Maike. I mean, it's been a real big pleasure to not just give you a session today, but also to be in the podcast. And I admire your work as well, like strongly. And as you know, I listen to a lot of your episodes, and I just find this work also so important, like your work that you do, but also the work with your podcast to like really share or give people the space to share stories and to talk about their work and just spread the wisdom that is out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation and we could encourage and inspire you for your own personal path in remembering who you are. We would be pleased to read or listen to your feedback, which you can give us on Instagram or Apple Podcasts. And of course, I would be happy if you recommend the podcast to the people who should also listen to these topics. If you want to read more about Pia, there will be a book published from Breathwork Bali in September this year. We have the year 2022, which is a collection of personal stories of breathwork facilitators like Pia and how breathwork found them. As soon as it is out, you will find it also, like all other links, in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening and see you soon.